Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we're going to be going through our tier list. Now, updating the tier list, we have a new Pokemon in the game, we have some new balance changes, and it's time we dive into it. Now, I'm going to be going through this in real time. I haven't thought about these picks, so there might be a little bit of deliberating. I'm going to try to keep this video not too long, but we shall see. All right, first on the list is Sylveon. I think Sylveon hasn't changed, is an incredibly strong Pokemon, goes straight to the A tier. This Pokemon is one of the true mages of the game. You can actually use SP items on it, lanes very well. If you wanted to, you could jungle this Pokemon, but you don't really need to. Feels very strong in lane, and can bring a lot of value and a lot of damage to a team. Very strong pick, hands down. All right, Mammo Swine. Mammo Swine as a defender, I think sits in a kind of pretty high B tier position. This tank is good, but it's almost never the go-to tank or like a super high tier pick. You can win games with this tank for sure. You could do you know, a really strong like Ninetales Mammo Swine lane. There's like really good lanes. The laning phase of this character is really good and brings some good CC to the table. Like, this character is good. I don't think that it scales super well. Like, its laning phase is actually probably better than its you know, like mid to late game phase, but it's a really solid Pokemon to use. Alolan Ninetales. Yeah, you know, there's a couple characters that I really think I gotta start, you know, kicking down a little bit, and Alolan Ninetales is one of them. I think that Alolan Ninetales is a very strong pick. It's got a great laning phase. It's a lot like Mammo Swine in this regard, that, you know, you can't go wrong picking this character, but it's not the best pick. In a lot of team comps, you know, you would probably just rather have something else. And you know, like I said, solid pick, can't go wrong. Solo queue, don't worry about it. I do think about teams in solo queue a bit. When I do my tier list, I tend to lean more into like true meta, which doesn't really factor in solo queue because solo queue is just crazy. But in solo queue, I'll give some thoughts. Ninetales, great pick, really solid pick. But as far as like truly like how strong the character is, I think it's a solid high B tier. Definitely gets a lot of good value. I mean, arguably bottom A tier at that point, it doesn't really matter, but really strong. Talonflame, easy A tier for me. This Pokemon in the jungle is insane, has tons of burst potential, crazy steal potential, can do a lot. Unfortunately, the character can't lane, which doesn't really hurt its viability too much, but it does take the jungle spot. So this character, you know, you have to think about team comp whenever you're running this, because otherwise you can't run some other junglers. But this character is incredibly strong, no denying that. Slowbro, I believe, is for sure a B tier tank. You know, I think that people have been kind of sleeping on Slowbro for a little bit. Amnesia just got a pretty hefty buff, which I think is pretty nice. I don't know if it's game changing, because a lot of the time when you're tanking a Slowbro, you're probably going to take telekinesis anyways. I personally love doing like a damage version of Slowbro, like it's like an off tank. I think that kind of, you know, maybe 2-tank meta could be really interesting. I don't know if we'll ever truly see that, but as the character sits with its strength, what I think it brings to the table, I think that Slowbro is very much so a B tier, solid B tier pick, for sure. All right, Mr. Mime. You know, a part of me really almost wants to put this character S tier, but I think it's a comfortable and easy A tier pick. Mr. Mime brings so much to the table in regards of damage, tankiness, being disruptive, CC with the walls, like the stun. It does a little bit of everything that you would want like a tank to do, and that's why you see it played like in a tank role in the tri-lane, kind of competitive meta. This character is just incredibly disruptive. The CC and like tankiness of this character, it's very deceptive, because, you know, you can be in a position dancing them, you feel like you're good, next thing you know 2-3 people are stunned, and it just happens so quickly, and the character is incredibly strong, really good potential to, you know, win objectives and win team fights with the ultimate. It's a very strong character. Lucario, the Lucario nerfs have hit, and I think that Lucario is now a comfortable A tier. This character feels like they really reined it in terms of its tankiness with the passive changes. So Feels good, got a slight damage nerf, doesn't feel like it's out of the meta at all. I think it's a very, very strong A tier pick. Wouldn't call it an S tier pick anymore, doesn't feel like it's that crazy. But I'd say a really, really solid A tier pick, in my opinion. Greninja. This factors in a little bit of solo queue as well as a little bit of like competitive, I suppose. But Greninja is just so consistent and good that it feels weird to put it in B tier. I don't think it's necessarily the best pick in the world, but I think that it's incredibly strong when used well. And you know, there's no going wrong picking a Greninja. Surf, Water Shuriken build, whatever you pick, the character's really, really good. Can't lane super well, but you can get through a laning phase, like especially in solo queue. Like if I really just feel like I have to carry a game, you can get through a laning phase. It's not really that complicated. But really, yeah, definitely pretty solid jungler. I think there's better jungle choices. So if I did put it in A tier, it would probably be the very, very bottom of A tier, or like, you know, close to the mid to bottom of A tier. Not that I factor that in too much, but just for the sake of conversation, super strong character. All right, Gengar. Oh, Gengar. I want to love you, but I simply cannot. Another group here. I want to love you, but I simply cannot. You are not good. Your buffs are not enough. The spell vamp doesn't do enough for you. I'm very sorry, friend. I wish that you were better, but unfortunately, you are not. The character is just way too committal. Gets in there. If it doesn't insta blow something up, it just is standing around. The character's struggling. Really, really struggling, even after the buffs. As for Gardevoir, I personally think that Gardevoir is leagues above someone like Gengar. But unfortunately struggles really hard to make their mark on the game because it just takes them so long to come online. The irony is that, you know, a quick comparison we can make here, again, for the sake of discussion, is you can compare, say, Gardevoir to Ninetales. Well, Ninetales has a phenomenal laning phase, and then slowly kind of falls off toward the late game. And Gardevoir has a terrible early game and really ramps up in the late game. But a lot of these games, you want to be an advantage early. You want that advantage early. So even so, it would be better for you more often than not to pick something like Ninetales. But Gardevoir can do a lot in the late game, which is, you know, that's something to think about. Definitely something to think about. But unfortunately, not enough for me to want to put it up in B tier. As for Garchomp, Garchomp ain't doing nothing. Worst character in the game, in my opinion. Not sure what to even say. I think that Garchomp is literally worse than Gengar. I think that Garchomp can't do anything. They gave it an attack speed buff, but I don't think that that's the quality of life changes that it needs. It struggles so hard. It can't lane well. It you know, basically has to jungle, and then you just have to get ramped up. It's got a level 10 ultimate. It is just so incredibly hard to get this character to do what this character needs to do. As for Eldegoss, I think that Eldegoss is an S tier healer. I always kind of put Eldegoss A tier with another character, and I think that I want to separate the pack a little bit. I think that Eldegoss brings so much to the table. If you go Pollen Puff, you have crazy sustain. If you go Leaf Tornado, you have crazy engage. If you go Cotton Guard, you have a crazy shield for the whole team, and then one of the best Unite moves in the game, especially for supporting and healing. Eldegoss is pretty much a game changer. Eldegoss is very much so a game changer. There's no going wrong with Eldegoss in my complete and honest opinion. As for Crustal, I think Crustal sits somewhere in this like mid-tier tank hierarchy that we have going on in B tier. There are a lot of defenders in this game, Mammo Swine, Slowbro, Crustal, who are good. They're truly good, but they're just very different from each other. It's the design of them, and I don't think that like it's so hard for me to say like which one of these three is actually the best. I mean, I could kind of say it. I think Mammo Swine would probably be the best out of these three, possibly, depending on how you're playing them, though. Because, like I said, I like off-tank Slowbro. I really like Crustal for, you know, kind of objective shredding and doing different things. So they're just niche. They're different, which means that the viability is kind of all over the place because, you know, they're not just the obvious go-to very strong tank. They just do unique things, so it doesn't make them bad. Crustal sits in B tier to me, somewhere in B tier. It doesn't matter if it's high, low, wherever. Crustal's a solid pick. You're not going to be the best tank in the game when you pick this character, or you're not picking the best tank in the game, but it's a solid choice nonetheless. As for Greedent, our newest addition, I threw him somewhere in the middle of the pack or somewhere in this list. I have yet to see the fully unlocked potential of Greedent. I don't think that I'm fully unlocking it, especially playing solo queue. It's hard to tell exactly where this character is going to land, but I do think that it's at minimum an A tier character. The damage potential, the tankiness, the annoying nature of the speed and the healing of this character, there's a lot going on here. And the reason why I'm personally struggling is because I just have no idea what a really skilled, talented, creative team or player will do with this character to solidify my opinion. I can't wait to see this character potentially played in tournaments. I can't wait to see how people are using it outside of my own understanding, because that's where I learn. I learn by being challenged by a unique idea, and I just feel like I haven't gotten that just yet, but I think that it's on the horizon. I think that it's coming. Greedent feels A tier to me, minimum. I'm not really positioning the tiers, by the way, because I would put it over Greninja, whatever. It's somewhere in here. I just like to use that as talking points. But Greedent feels like an A tier. I don't think it's an S tier, but it feels like an A tier. As for Cramorant and Ninetales have both kind of fallen in this same B tier position. I think they're incredibly high B tier, so they're basically just sitting at the very end, or at the bottom of A tier. They're great laners, incredibly strong in the early game, and then they just kind of like slightly gradually lose some of their strength and viability as the game goes on. Doesn't make them bad. I think they're incredibly strong, but a lot of time they may not be the best pick, but they're a very, very, very good pick, in my opinion. As for Cinderace, S tier jungler. This character has hyper carry like you wouldn't believe. I definitely think that Cinderace is better than Greninja, and it just has the ease, the damage is just freer. You're just auto attacking and going crazy, slinging abilities with a crazy Unite move. So Cinderace, no doubt in my mind, one of the best characters in the game. The irony is that this character is only the best because of jungle, pretty much. If this character was forced to lane, or let's say hypothetically attackers couldn't jungle, this would be a much different story. They would have to get their curve to being powerful would be much more slight and gradual, as opposed to a very aggressive strength curve. So jungle really enables this character to be incredibly strong. All right, Blastoise. I think Blastoise is still an A tier tank. It may be a bottom of A tier tank, but I think the consistency, the CC, the damage that comes from Blastoise, even after the nerf, puts it ahead of the other tanks in B tier. Honestly, if I'm being honest, it might be contesting with Mammo Swine because of the damage nerfs. I don't know. They both have good early games. I think that what's always going to put Blastoise ahead of Mammo Swine is probably the ultimate. Even without the damage, it's a gigantic AoE ultimate and is incredibly strong. Blastoise feels like a solid, phenomenal A tier pick. You can't really go wrong with Blastoise, to be completely honest. As for Absol, I think Absol's like a really high B tier. You're not really going to see this character picked in tournament or in competitive play, because I just don't think the character scales super well. It kind of requires you to stomp really hard and to just be a menace. I do think that the character is incredibly strong in solo queue. Like, oh my gosh, this character is ridiculous. You can dive so hard and really be frustrating and ridiculous, steal objectives with the Unite move, and win games, no problem, for sure. But I don't see this character having like a super strong position in the meta, but it's solid. It's a pretty solid character. And the same for Charizard. I think that Charizard and Absol are like the all-rounder speedster versions of each other. He is very strong. He is great at diving the back line. I say the same things for Charizard because Charizard hasn't changed in a while. It's the all-rounder issue, friends. It's the same thing I bring up every time we talk about all-rounders. The character, it just can't lane, and you have to jungle, and then you're contesting for other jungle positions. Like, you have to take jungle from not only Absol, who I'd say is probably an even tier, but potentially Greninja, or potentially Talonflame, or potentially Cinderace. And it's like, you're just competing for a very important role, of which on a team of 5 players, there's only one of, so it's not even like you can just lane it just because there's 2 laners. So Charizard's in a position where it's just in a very niche position. You have to jungle it, and when is the right time to jungle it? I don't know. In competitive, not really ever. In solo queue, sure, it's a pretty decent pick. Pikachu. I want to make an interesting decision here. I think that Pikachu could be B tier. It may be A tier. I want to put it in the exact same position that I'm seeing for Cram and Ninetales. And that might be too bold. But I think that Pikachu might be the biggest winner of this last patch. This is a bit bold, and I'm taking a chance on this one. But I think that Pikachu can kind of hold its weight right now. I'm not 100% sure if it can really keep up with Cram and Ninetales, but Cram and Ninetales have been getting kind of crept up on a little bit. They've been getting kind of power crept. They've been getting kind of pushed down a tiny bit. And yeah, feels good to me. I don't think the character's just naturally meta anymore. Like B tier is the same thing, you know, you hear me say, like it's solid pick. And that's kind of how Pikachu's feeling to me right now. Feels really solid. As for Venusaur, I'm not going to lie. I'm really torn on this one. I kind of think that Venusaur is still S tier. I want to play it safe and put it A tier, but I also want to you know, take a chance on my perception of the meta and my perception of the character. I think that Venusaur is incredibly strong. I think that Giga Drain and Petal Dance is nerfed, and it still feels like a very, very big force to be reckoned with. I think that this character stands out ahead of the other attackers, and that's why it, to me, really takes its position. You can jungle this character, you can lane this character, it's got the versatility, it has the damage, the sustain, the Solar Beam build is honestly fine and good and great, and I really think that it holds some form of an S tier position. I could be wrong here, it might just be A tier. I don't know. I really want the S tier to feel differentiated on based on just raw strength. And I do feel that way when it comes to like Eldegoss. I just feel like Eldegoss is insane. I feel like Cinderace is game changing, and I kind of still feel that way for Venusaur. I think I do. Hopefully I'm not wrong here, but regardless, solid pick is the sentiment. As for Zeraora, I think that Zeraora has been creeping up on the S tier. If I haven't been putting this character in the S tier in the past, it definitely holds that position now. I think that the character scales incredibly well. I think the character can jungle, can lane, is just so ridiculous. Like you know, a part of me, people always ask me, like, do I think that Zeraora should be nerfed? A part of me doesn't want this character to get nerfed because it's one of the few speedsters that truly has viability, but it is really strong. So it might need a tiny nerf, you know, something to pull it, you know, down in line a little bit. But I think that this character is easily an S tier pick for me. As for Wigglytuff, I think Wigglytuff is A tier. I'm not exactly sure where and how. You know, is this character still being used as a tank? You know, what comp does this character go into? I'm not exactly sure, but the character is strong. It's obnoxious. It's annoying. It's incredible in solo queue. I guess I could throw that point out there as well. Wigglytuff is Wigglytuff. You're going to get crazy shields. You have score shield potential. You're tanky. You bring CC. Like, you're Wigglytuff. I don't think I could put this character anywhere but A tier, to be completely honest. As for Snorlax, solid A tier. I don't really think that I need to throw Snorlax in like S tier tank, although I do think that it's the best tank in the game in regards to the defender role. Yeah, I don't, you know, I think it's better than Blastoise. I think it's better than Greedent. You know, I kind of have this like, you know, I don't really have the tier structured. It's just about strength in general. But Snorlax, easy A tier. If someone was like, you have to put a tank in S tier, I would probably put Snorlax. So, that's my thoughts. Let's go for Machamp. Machamp, you know, I don't know if I feel comfortable putting Machamp in C tier, but I think that the hierarchy of all-arounder balance has really shown. You have like best all-rounder Lucario, like hands down. Then the buffs to Charizard separated Charizard a little bit from the pack. Right after that, you got Machamp, and then, you know, down in the bottom, you got Garchomp, and it kind of reflects straight through the tier list. So I think the character feels good. Again, can't lane, all-rounder issue that I always talk about. Can't really lane well. You have to jungle it. You really have to compete for a lot of jungle positions. And yeah, unfortunately, the character just falls a little bit short. But for Blissey, no problem here. Blissey, you don't even have a place to sit. You are the A tier now, Blissey. And Blissey, easy A tier pick for me. I'll just, you know, cram her on the edge there. Undeniably a strong support. I think that, you know, like I said earlier, Eldegoss and Blissey, I used to always just clump them in the A tier together. But I don't know. I don't think that's fair. I think that Goss does pull away a little bit, and I think that Blissey is an easy A tier pick for me to throw on the list for sure. So this is my tier list. This has a little bit of solo queue influence. I talk about some of those points. And let's do a quick recap. Eldegoss, meta-changing, game-defining abilities sustain. Cinderace, ridiculously strong, easy, enabled by the jungle. Venusaur, solid, lane, jungle, incredible. Zeraora, solid, lane, jungle, incredible. Blissey, incredible healer, one of the best supports hands down. Sylveon, one of the true mages of the game, has that ability damage, can lane very well, gets Unite move at 8, solid pick. Talonflame, the burst is ridiculous, solid jungler. Mr. Mime, pseudo tank, crazy disruptive, brings damage to the team, incredible pick. Lucario got knocked down a bit from the nerfs, incredibly consistent. Greninja, a solid option, not usually what you're going to take. It competes against Cinderace for the jungle position, but when it's played well and when it's played, it's incredibly strong. Greedent, unique, weird, strong. Not exactly sure my opinion on this character, but I think that it at minimum lands an A tier. Blastoise, nerfed, incredibly consistent and strong Unite move, strong CC, really solid. Wigglytuff, solid character, pseudo tank kind of deal, you know, support defender kind of a tank deal that we have going on in this game, but really annoying, strong in solo queue, but just a great pick. Snorlax, the best true defender in my opinion. I think incredibly consistent, strong, brings a lot of CC to the table. Mammo Swine, Slowbro, Crustal, more niche, good picks, reliable. B tier, anything in B tier can be played in solo queue easily, no problem. In the competitive sense, B tier is going to kind of take a seat back, like a step back. Not going to see these picks a whole lot, but they're strong. They could come out in certain team comps if teams want to run them easily, but I think the status quo will lean away from the B tier picks. Pikachu, Cram, Ninetales, other mages in the game, some of the other mages in the game, but they don't really scale super well. Really strong early games. They don't scale super well. That's kind of why they take a small step back. As for Absol and Charizard, they're the speedster all-rounder, parallel to one another's. They're both competing for jungle positions against pretty much anything that I've listed already prior, which kind of knocks them down a tiny bit, but they're consistent. They're strong. They're good in solo queue, in my opinion. And yeah, unfortunately, they just fall a little bit short of the A tier. As for C tier, Gardevoir, unfortunate early game, but crazy end game. The funny thing about Gardevoir is that in team play, it's really hard to play this character. In solo queue, I actually think Gardevoir can carry really hard in solo queue just because of the end game. Machamp, the hierarchy of all-rounders has fallen on Machamp. He's just been getting power crept and can't lane well, struggles incredibly hard. As for the D tier, near useless characters, both competing for jungle. They take too long to do what they need to do. Well, that's really a Garchomp thing. Gengar just has this one little burst window, and outside the burst window just stands around, does nothing. These characters are just truly unfortunate position in the meta right now. They both got buffs, didn't move in my mind at all. I think that Garchomp is undeniably the worst character in the game, which makes me truly heartbroken because I love the character, but it is what it is. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, friends, be sure to be kind to one another. Tell someone that you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.